But what I thought is if I can do something to just keep this buffer at a level I'm happy with, and for me, I just have to feel, well, as long as I can cover, say, at least 6 to 12 months minimum, and the longer the better, then I can take my time before committing back to a job. And so I found myself committing to more property deals and selling some as I went and gradually topping up this buffer. And that is how I did my step out of employment into, well, an early retirement. I don't really call it being retired because now I just focus on property, and that's my area that I'm very passionate about. And other ways that I've learnt to speed this up even faster is finding types of property where I can add massive value. For example, development opportunities where I can get an approval for townhouses or for subdivisions, and I've had experience with those. And once I just got out of that, I need cash flow, and managing a buffer of money as my peace of mind. And can I say this? If you have a spare buffer of money that represents, say, a year's worth of income, it changes your psychology. The way you look at life changes. You no longer think, gee, I hope I don't get an unexpected bill. You know you've got it covered. And aside from that, it opens up more opportunities. If you've got some cash sitting there, that could be, you might think, wow, this is an opportunity. I will use some of that as a deposit to make a purchase. Or it might be that you are able to invest in an opportunity that you just otherwise wouldn't have. And imagine the feeling if you had, say, $50,000 just sitting spare that you thought, okay, that's something I can use and it's not going to affect my lifestyle as spare money, but you had to go into debt $50,000 to do something. Wouldn't you feel more open to using the spare cash that was already yours than going into debt and taking a chance? So it's kind of that shift that made me feel as long as I've got a spare bit of cash, I feel I'm confident that I can just keep this going. So over time, I've gradually grown the portfolio. I do buy and hold some properties. I buy and develop some properties. I certainly sell some as I go. Another thing too that I just mentioned quickly is the way our taxation system works. In my experience, you're better off to actually make capital gains on your properties than you are to receive a lot of regular income. To put that in an example, if I could purchase a property and make, say, a $100,000 gain after owning it for, say, 18 months, for example, and then I sell that property, due to the rules of the capital gains tax, you can get a 50% discount, which means I'm only taxed like I've earned $75,000 instead of, $50,000 instead of the $100,000, and I've still had other tax deductions and such along the way. But if I set that property up so in 18 months, somehow, let's say I bought it and it was cash flow positive enough to give me $100,000 of extra income, well then I'd be taxed as if I've earned that full $100,000. So again, what I realised is by looking at property not necessarily as a week-to-week cash flow, but maybe a year-to-year, or 6 months to 6 months, or 18 months to 18 months, the tax system supports you more because you pay less tax if you sell a property after that time. And I've got that peace of mind that I'm not just depending on a small regular amount to appear in my bank account and that's sort of limiting me. I've actually got a chunk of capital that I can use. So why I say some of you might be in a position where you're closer to retiring than you think is because what I found is when you're in the daily grind and you're just too busy earning a living to really want to do much else, you don't always see the opportunity around. You don't feel motivated to necessarily look at what else because your time's all used up and your energy's all used up with what you're doing. If there's some way that you can commit to a property, and for me it took many years to start with before I started to get some capital growth, but by allowing that time to happen and that growth and then being willing to sell the property and end up with a chunk of cash, it's surprising the difference it can make. And the way sorry, a little pause there. the way I look at it too, which I think is pretty significant, is when you choose to do something or you choose not to do something, the time will go past anyway. Like, what you could have done 8 years ago or 12 years ago, a small decision, whether it was put in an offer on something or not, if you did or didn't do it, it might drastically change where you're heading, but the time still passes. So some people might think, well, gee, I don't want to wait 10 years or I don't want to wait 15 years for an outcome for my decisions. Like, I want quick money, I want to make it quickly. But if you realise the time will pass anyway, why not take a step towards things? And it may well support you, and it may just snowball and compound in a way that you'll really be surprised. Yeah, so part of what I wanted to do, and I will jump into that now, is the discussion. So I may have raised a few questions just from what I've said, or somebody else might be thinking any topic at all relating to property investing. I'd like to open the room up. So just to do that, I've got some little handouts that I'd like to pass out. So Matt, if you could pass those out. Meanwhile, if you just put your thinking caps on, think about anything at all property related. Now, I'm not here as the expert, far from it. I'm here just as a facilitator now, where if there's a question in the room, if I can answer it, I will, but if I can't, I'll put it right back, and we'll just see what we can get out of this. The handout I'm giving you, the concept of what I'm about to talk about is called a mastermind group. Some of you may have heard of Napoleon Hill and his book Think and Grow Rich. He talks about when a group of people have a common goal and they come together harmoniously to satisfy that goal, it creates a whole new energy. It actually, think of it this way, all of us in the room all have our own experiences, we've all had our own knowledge, and at the moment all we can go by normally is either our individual knowledge or perhaps just what we go and consult with somebody one-on-one. My thinking is a lot of the people who are sitting right next to you could well have exactly the knowledge or the experience that could give you something to help you move forward. And why don't we test that out? I'm confident there'll be some valuable information come. So part of that handout just explains a little bit about the mastermind concept. But on the other side, I'm posing a question and it's giving you a chance to make some notes if something comes either as an answer to your own question, or one of the questions that gets asked might be just what somebody else needs to hear the answer to help them move forward. And finally too, on that page, I've put a little action plan section where I've thought, as I say, time will pass by regardless, so why not think about something you can do to take a step closer to wherever you want to be? And if you can think of a short-term something, that might just be a really simple thing. It might just be following something up like that you've been putting off, or anything. Just something to give you a little bit of confidence that you're moving again in the right direction. There's a spot where you can make a little note of that, and you can think a bit longer term, it's like a medium and long term. Remember, time will pass regardless, so it's up to us what decisions we make as to what outcome we'll get. So at this point, would anyone like to volunteer with a question? And if you would, could you please just say your first name first, so I know who so we all know who we're speaking with, and then just ask your question.